of the joint. I don't want these two sides to solder to this opposite end here. So I'll apply the anti-flux to the inside edge of those two hinges. Also, to protect the other side, I will apply a little here on these two solder seams to keep them from flowing. And then right across the back edge. Also on the underside. It's important to get the fit perfect in the length all the way across so that when you're soldering it, it'll fit evenly and the hinge will work correctly. Okay. Make sure that your anti-flux is dry so when you apply the fire coat it doesn't run. You want to fire coat the entire piece. Flame dry, then apply a little flux on this side of the joint. Use it very sparingly. Because this bracelet was constructed with an overlay, which two pieces, one was cut out and the other piece was put on top and welded on. I'm not sure what type of solder was used. For this soldering repair, I'll be using an easy solder so that I don't interrupt or damage any of the pieces that have been put together. I want to turn my light off so I can see the heating process so I don't burn up the piece. I want a nice large brushy flame. Heat it slowly at first. With silver it takes quite a bit of heat to get it to come up to temperature. It'll start to glow a little red and then the solder will flow. Solder flowed, take away the heat. Now I can clean the top part up if there's any solder left. It's important to have a good straight wire. You can take your piece of wire, holding it with two pairs of pliers and yanking on it firmly. It'll straighten your wire out nicely so that it'll go right through the hinge. As you're pushing the pin through, it's a good idea to twist it a little bit. It helps the pin go in. Now you can see it's much tighter. Doesn't wiggle around. You want to snip it off, leaving approximately about a ½ millimeter on both sides. Then rivet the ends. Lightly file the side. Bring it down close to flush. Right on the pin. Light sand. You also need to lightly sand across the top edge here. To remove any excess solder. If you can't get it all real close, you can use a flat graver to come in and lightly remove it right at the inner seam. Now I'll be installing the safety chain. The safety chain is used in case the clasp opens, that the piece doesn't fall off the person's wrist. So the safety chain can't be too long when attached, no more than 2 to 2.5 inches in length. When you're putting the safety chain on, make sure that it looks right and it doesn't get in the way of the design and functionability of the piece. We'll be taking this safety chain here and attaching it to the bracelet by these 2 jump rings, which I'll be attaching to this end of the bracelet. I'll take and file the ends flat to match the flatness of the bracelet. You don't want to put a half round edge on a flat edge. Just a few strokes of the file will do, just enough to make a flat ledge. After the safety chain's been attached, you need to solder this jump ring closed, and then you'd be done with this repair. If the locket doesn't close and the hinges are okay, it could be the closing mechanism, which brings us to the next topic, clasps. This is a fairly common type of closing mechanism. It has a rod which goes into a small little hole. If it's worn or sometimes it gets bent, it won't close properly. So what you need to do, either on this particular case, is slightly bend it in or out depending on which angle works best until you get the clasp to close correctly. You don't want to squish the wire too much. There are many variations on this type of closure. Another style would be a flat tab. As you can see, there's a tab on this side, and then on the inner side there's a section cut out. This is always also bent. This side here either is pulled towards me or away from me to put tension on the inside of the clasp. On this one, I'll need to bend it towards me just slightly. If the mechanism doesn't work because it's worn, you'll either have to add a new piece onto the plunger section or add some metal to the receiving section. This Pro clasp, which has a safety on the back that's hinged, works through tension that's put through the sliding bar. On this particular Pro clasp, occasionally it'll break about here or a little lower. If this is the case, you'll usually have to replace this whole piece by refabricating it. Any work that needs to be done in this manner, or if you need to heat the piece, you'll have to remove all the pearls and have it restrung. This is another Pro clasp. It also works on the tension of the spring that's created on this piece here. This is one piece of wire that is usually sawn out of a sheet, so it has good tension in it. It's slid through a bar and then it pushes in and snaps closed. On this box clasp, with this safety on the side, many of them have them, some don't, has a plunger which you push down and pull the clasp apart. It has a V-shaped plunger that puts tension on the inside of the box with a little locking mechanism up in front. The most common problem is that it loses its spring from being used constantly over time. So what you need to do for this particular one is take it and planish the front section here of the plunger, lightly tapping and hardening the metal. Once that's been done, you'll have to pull up on the V section to give it some more tension. Then it will snap shut. Another common repair that you'll run into on a clasp like this is that the top of the tongue here breaks off at this edge, and you have to replace the whole tongue. This is a tongue that I'll have to be replacing on this clasp that broke off in this manner. On this particular repair, what I'll need to do is make the measurement from the inside to figure out how wide of a sheet I need to cut. So I'll need approximately 5 millimeters. I've already pre-cut that piece for this job, and I've also made the makings of the plunger. I also wanted to check the thickness of the metal to make sure that the thickness of the metal is the same. Now I'll measure how deep I need to make the tongue. I'll make my measurement a little longer than I'll need. I can always cut it down to fit. I'll need approximately 9 millimeters. I'll make a mark on the metal where I need to bend it. Using a pair of flat nose pliers, I'll start my bend, making sure it's nice and straight. I'll bend it about halfway, then I'll anneal it and bend it the rest of the way. You never want to overbend it. If you overbend the piece, you'll end up cracking it, having stress cracks you might not see. So it's better to bend it and anneal it and bend it a little bit. Now I can finish the bend Again, it's very important that you pay attention to this section of the tongue, that you aren't over bending it.